Welcome to this video where we will discuss the drying of waterborne paint through dehydration. Waterborne paint dries when the water in the paint evaporates, which is the dehydration process. As the water evaporates, the water must go into the air around the paint, but the air can only sustain so much of the water, so air needs to continually move over the paint job in order for it to dry properly. As the moving air pulls the water out of the paint through this evaporation and dehydration process, the paint then starts to come together to form a solid film, which is a process known as coalescence. The word coalesce just means coming together. So all the little molecules of paint start to come together when the water evaporates, and then over time it cures to create a strong film. To help with the dehydration, we use these tools, which are called blowers, air dryers, and venturis. In the case of drying or dehydrating our paint, these tools are used with our compressed air, which is channeled through a narrow section and then into a larger section where we change the speed and the pressure of the air. The air that comes out is lower pressure but spread over a larger area. This low pressure air spread over the large area is able to better cover a greater surface area of our paint to allow for better dehydration evaporation of the water from the waterborne base product. Here we have a painter painting a fender with waterborne base coat. Once the painter has completed the application, the painter will grab the venturi tool and then make sure that it is used to move air over top of the panel to help with the dehydration process. There are several things we need to keep in mind with using this tool to ensure that it is used correctly and does not cause any defects in our paint. Number one, we need to make sure that the tool and the surrounding areas are all clean, or we could blow dirt, dust, or debris into the paint. This also includes masking materials that may not be securely taped down. Next, we need to make sure that we understand the direction of airflow in the paint booth. This is a downdraft paint booth where air travels from the ceiling to the floor. So we always want to make sure that the venturi or dryer tool is pointing downwards and that the air is traveling in a somewhat downward direction. Otherwise, we create turbulent air, which can stir up dust or debris or our masking materials. The next thing we want to also consider with this is not to move around excessively. We will need to move the tool around the panel to ensure that everything dries evenly and effectively. But if we move too rapidly or too frequently, we will defeat the purpose by not allowing air to stay in one area, which will prevent the area from drying quickly. And the fast movement can also cause dirt and debris and other issues to be stirred up in the booth. Here we can see the base coat starting to dehydrate. We can see the wet area on the right, and then the drier sections or dehydrated sections on the left side. As we start to see this dehydrate, then we can slowly move to the next section. And we want to keep a fair distance from the panel. If the tool is too close to the panel, again, it can cause defects in the paint, which we'll demonstrate a little bit later. Continue moving around the panel slowly, watching the paint product to ensure that it dries effectively. This will take several minutes, and in some cases can be a slower process depending on the temperature, but more importantly, the humidity and airflow within your spraying environment. If you have an area that is low humidity and has good airflow, you'll find that the paint dries much faster. When you have low airflow and high humidity, you'll find that the paint takes a long time to dry because the ambient air is unable to pick up very much of the moisture or humidity from the paint. The air is already saturated with moisture from the humid environment. As we continue to watch the paint dry here, we can see that almost the entire panel now has this matte or dull color. The bottom of the fender is still a little bit wet. You'll find that areas that are hidden, where they don't get a lot of direct airflow from the paint booth's air movement, are areas that will take longer to dry. And that tends to be bottom sides of panels, areas closer to the floor, and other areas that lack that good airflow, which could partly be caused by the way that you have the booth loaded with parts in the vehicle, etc. Continue to dehydrate the paint until you're 100% sure all the water has been evaporated. And we'll talk a little bit later about a really good system we have for ensuring the complete dehydration of the base coat. Now that we have seen the proper use of the dehydration tools, let's have a look at improper use of the tools. So what can we see here that's different from the last section of this video? We're noticing that the distance between the tool and the panel is changing between being too close and being too far. We can also see that the painter is moving the tool much too rapidly, way too quickly. This creates turbulent air, which can stir up dust and, as mentioned, cause your masking materials to move around. Next, there's a lack of concentration on any one area, which is actually preventing the panel from drying. Another consideration to notice in this video is the direction of airflow. Remember that this is a downdraft paint booth where the air travels from the ceiling to the floor. Much of this drying has included air that is traveling only horizontally at the panel and not in a downwards fashion. This constant moving of the venturi is only going to cause problems for the paint. And when it's too close, it can actually cause the base coat to move around. And in a few minutes, we'll show what exactly that looks like. So continue watching here as we see all these improper procedures being used. So ensure that when we use this, we're following those proper steps to prevent any potential problems in our paint. Another issue that happens sometimes is arcing. Someone will think that they're using the proper procedures, but they are still moving the venturi. Although a little bit slower, it's not slow enough. We want to make sure that we are not constantly moving it, and that when we do move it, it is very slow. If we do get the venturi too close, as we see here, it just blows the wet base coat around. That particular tool, which is a blade style venturi or dryer, can be used correctly by increasing the distance. And also consider when using these tools that you do have a regulator on it to control the amount of compressed air that comes out. You may not necessarily need the venturi turned up to its full capacity. Partial capacity is usually sufficient when drying paint. And of course, the closer you are, the lower the air pressure that's required when using the tool. And here we can see the base coat is drying relatively quickly with this particular tool. And as we see at this point, it looks like it's almost completely dehydrated. In this next step, what we see happen is the painter plugged in the venturi, but the regulator was already turned on, which caused it to jerk around. Always ensure it's off before you use it. In this part, we can see the painter completed painting the spray out card and then decided to use the paint gun to help to dehydrate the paint. The problem with this method is the spray pattern is very narrow, which is not very effective at drying the paint. And when you are using the trigger and the triggering method, if you're not careful, you will have base coat come out of the gun, which we've seen happen a few times here. That can ruin your paint job. This video has been sped up to twice its normal speed, and it depicts properly applied base coat that is using a proper procedure for the dehydration with this venturi tool. When it was timed with a stopwatch, it took exactly 52 seconds for this base coat to reach the point of appearing completely matte and dehydrated. This next video shows the same spray out card, which was painted with too much base coat. It was over applied. And then this also used the correct method for dehydration. So the only difference between these two videos is the over application of the base coat in this video. This one has also been sped up to twice its normal speed. And when this one was timed with a stopwatch, it was much slower because of the over application. And so with the proper application, the last video, it took 52 seconds. In this video with the improper application, it took 1 minute and 39 seconds. So almost twice as slow to dry with the over application. Proper application is important when painting, but improper application, heavy application really increases the amount of time it takes for paint to dry. And if the paint doesn't dry thoroughly, as we see here, it's still a little bit wet even after that time, it can cause paint defects. In this video, what we're going to see is a regular air blower being used, and because the air blower puts the paint at such a fine point, all it does is blow around the base coat and cause damage. So we never want to use a tool such as this for the dehydration of waterborne base coat. Some booths have engineered controls like this one, which are blowers built into the top of the wall near the ceiling. And using this control panel, you can activate these blowers when you're ready to flash or dehydrate your base coat. You can turn them on individually, you can set the time, and also adjust the booth temperature. To ensure that your base coat is completely dried, an IR temperature gun such as this one can be used to measure the initial panel temperature before you spray it. Here we can see it's 23 degrees Celsius. As soon as you spray it, you'll see the temperature drops dramatically, so it dropped down to 19 degrees Celsius. As we start to venturi or blow our panel, you'll see that the panel still has a bit of gloss. It's not fully dehydrated. It's only at 20 Celsius, so it's getting a little bit warmer. It's important that we also give this a few moments after the venturi to come up to temperature, as the venturi or air movement will decrease the panel temperature. After the panel has a completely matte appearance and we've seen the temperature has come back to its original temperature, then we can be assured that the panel has reached full dehydration. Thank you for watching this video. We hope it was helpful.